Since the recording of this episode, Starbucks workers across the country walked out on an unfair labor practice strike starting on November 13th and are asking members of the public not to buy Starbucks at any location, unionized or not. You can sign the pledge to honor their picket line at nocoffeenocontract.org. You're listening to the Labor Notes Podcast, our weekly show on rank and file news and organizing tactics. I'm Danielle Smith, an organizer at Labor Notes.
And I'm Natasha Elena Ullman, a staff writer at Labor Notes.
Okay, Natasha, so it's opposite day in the summer of 2024, and you're now the new CEO of Starbucks. It's one of the biggest restaurant chains in the world, and only months ago, its unionized baristas successfully brought the company to the bargaining table. Those baristas, whose starting pay is often in the $15 to $19 an hour range, have said they end up depending on SNAP and Medicaid programs to survive, and that they're also constantly slammed by long customer lines. Do you, A, bargain to reach an agreement on the baristas' pay and severe understaffing issues, or B, you make money moves? You negotiate yourself a $98 million compensation package and a seat as chair of the board so that they can't get rid of you so easily. And then you reveal a plan you call Back to Starbucks. It's great. It doesn't really do anything about pay or staffing, but at least it forces baristas to write friendly notes on coffee cups.
Well, I personally would not stand in the way of anything a barista wanted from me, but it sounds like Starbucks CEO Brian Niccol was a little too busy coming up with the Back to Starbucks title for his project to get there.
Yeah, but the good news is Starbucks Workers United members also have a plan, and theirs might actually work. But just to take a step back, if you're wondering, where are things with the Starbucks Workers United campaign? Like it felt like they were unionizing hundreds of stores at one point, then they started bargaining, and then they actually seemed pretty close to a contract this time last year, then they weren't bargaining anymore. What's going on now? Natasha has you covered.
So here's a quick recap. About 4 years ago, in December 2021, a group of Starbucks workers in Buffalo, New York became the first in the country to unionize in the chain. And since then, Starbucks workers have organized at around 650 stores. How they pulled that off is a whole story in and of itself, and we won't get into all those details today. But it was in part by using what they called a partner on point system. This is where they had their most experienced organizers respond to calls by other Starbucks workers looking for organizing advice. As more stores organized, the union trained up new worker leaders who had just won at their stores, as our coworker Jenny Brown reported. Jenny has been covering Starbucks Workers United campaigns for years now.
Then in February last year, Starbucks management agreed to come to the table to bargain something like a national contract. That was after workers threw a variety of pressure tactics at them, including marches on the boss, petitions, picketing stores, and walking out together. It was a massive win that showed how dedicated organizing to build escalating disruption can exert pressure even on one of the most powerful employers in the U.S. They bargained for about 8 months after that, and the workers held a strike authorization vote with 98% voting yes. Just before Christmas last year, Starbucks union members held short unfair labor practice strikes at 300 stores, and then things seemed to go silent.
But the workers have been in motion, and they've been mobilizing more publicly again over the past several weeks, as our coworker Jenny Brown, who is here with us today, has been reporting. In her piece last month, titled Strike Captains and Practice Pickets, Starbucks Workers Aim to Bring a Contract Home, she reported on how Starbucks Workers United members have now been conducting practice pickets at hundreds of stores. The workers are also asking customers not to go to any Starbucks store in the country if they go on strike. That's a big deal considering there are 10,000 Starbucks stores in the US and only 650 of them are unionized. You can read Jenny's piece at labornotes.org, and we've also linked it in the episode description.
And not only do we have Jenny with us here today, we also have Sabina Aguirre of Starbucks Workers United, who works at Starbucks in Columbus, Ohio. Welcome, Sabina and Jenny. Thank you both for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. Hi.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Okay, so I'm still thinking about this Back to Starbucks plan that CEO Brian Niccol, who took on the role last year, came up with. As Jenny reported, this plan gets rid of things that are good, like free bathrooms and water. It makes baristas write personalized messages on every drink order. Starbucks workers spent years organizing and communicating about pay and understaffing issues. And yet, this plan sounds like it came straight from one of those LinkedIn thought leader posts about how you should cut costs but reconnect with your customer by looking them in the eye and saying their first name a lot. Sabina, what has this been like for you all? And how has the quote-unquote back to Starbucks plan gone over with union members?
Yeah, I think to say it was less than positively received would be a bit of an understatement. I think just broadly, workers and customers alike have realized the fact that this ingenuine connection doesn't really mean anything to people. When you claim to create a third space, but add a lot of asterisks onto those conditions for a third space, it really makes it feel like a corporatized, forced fun environment. And I think especially when it comes to workers, we've realized it's kind of impossible to connect with people one-on-one when you're understaffed to the point where there's only two of you at the store all day. And so you're both running around making drinks and you don't really have time to get to know people in any way that's actually genuine.
Sabina, can you talk a little bit about how your store came to be unionized?
Yeah, I think my store is a pretty interesting story. But to start with my store, we actually have to start way back by the strikes last year when afterwards in January, my original store, which was the first unionized store in Columbus, Ohio, unfortunately was shut down by the company. From there, our staff was disseminated throughout the district, and I was lucky enough to go to a new store in our district employing the new siren system that Starbucks was really proud of that they ended up discontinuing later on. But that's neither here nor there. And upon finding out that, I'm going to this new store in January, I was excited to meet a new staff and hopefully unionize at a new store. And I didn't know how much time the company would actually give me to get ahead on my plan. It ended up being around June of the summer where the store actually opened. And by that time, I had met all my new coworkers and gotten in their ears about unionizing and the importance of it, as well as the fact that we're all tenured partners. We know what's going on here. We know the tricks and the little scams that the company puts in place and the ways that we've been taken advantage of in the past. And it really gave me the opportunity to, before we even step foot onto this property, to get in everyone's ear and say, we've had enough of this and we need to go in with a plan to make our store better from day one.
That's amazing. What are some of the issues that you all organized to change?
Yeah, I would say for us, our main issues are always things like not being able to make connections, not being able to actually have any time on the floor to breathe, but also just recognizing the fact that Starbucks is one of the biggest labor law violators in history. And if we don't have protections for ourselves put in place before larger issues arrive, we would be at a point where we were left kind of without a suit of armor on a battlefield. It puts us in a not good spot just to start out. And I think that goes back to the store closures recently when you've noticed that at non-union stores, they weren't given the options to bargain or to kind of fight for a better end deal when it comes to that store shutdown. And a lot of people were told a week before that they were going to lose their jobs. We didn't want to let ourselves be put into that situation, and we made sure we could do everything to prevent that.
Yeah, they closed 500 stores. That's really, and including some union ones. And then the union ones, you could actually negotiate the closing, right? That's really great. Can you tell me a little bit about the time standards for how fast an order is supposed to be filled now?
Yeah, my store isn't drive-through, but I believe for drive-through stores, they were given 4 minutes to get drinks out, though you should verify that with someone else who works at a drive-through store. And for our in-store orders, we have 12 minutes. So that's 12 minutes for mobile orders, and then I believe it's around 5 minutes for in-store orders. Now, this all sounds great in practice, right? Everybody wants to get their drinks out fast, and I would say that all us baristas also want to get your drinks out fast. But when you're putting in these time constraints, but not giving people adequate staffing, it's kind of just an uphill battle for us constantly to get to these metrics that they're ever changing and ever heightening. It's really setting us up for a fight we can never win, and it feels like we're constantly being put on the back end and made to do more with less.
Yeah, I mean, how does that play out in practice, trying to meet these expectations?
Yeah, in practice, it not only leads to frustration from customers, but at times it can even endanger workers. I know workers at my store have faced direct threats to their personal safety regarding things like times for orders and regarding things like the new policies with bathrooms and water cups. These things are putting real partners in danger, and it's honestly super frustrating as someone in the store on a day to day basis to see the fact that no matter how much every Starbucks worker complains about their job and every Starbucks worker recognizes the fact that the job is hard, corporate seems to ignore that and assume that by placing a time constraint on things, it'll automatically solve the problem. When in reality, as we all know, staffing fixes these issues, nothing else.
Yeah, that seems like corporate magical thinking. What are the practice pickets you've done recently been like? What did it take to organize, and how did members and customers respond?
Yeah, I would say practice pickets, super high energy. I know at least here in Columbus, we've been super excited for everything, especially based on the fact that our base is majority younger people. It's been a really great opportunity to teach new people about the importance of practice pickets because they're not as used in modern labor fights. And so bringing back that tried and true method of practice pickets has really shown us our strength prior to going into any striking and gotten people used to the discipline and the real like maintenance it takes to go to a picket. You're not just showing up there and hoping things work out. We've trained, we've been prepared. People know chants, people know what things to bring. We've made signs, obviously. And it really does set people into a position where going into any sort of strikes or going into any sort of larger action, they feel like they know what they're doing and we're confident and ready to do whatever it takes to get that contract now.
So, how has management responded so far, and how are workers responding to Starbucks' announcement at the time that it's closing 500 stores across the country?
Yeah, I would say, per usual with Starbucks, there's a lack of communication with management. Going into unionizing a store, I would say that's probably one of the top complaints I hear from most stores is that management is completely not communicative, not supportive. And that shows with the store closures just as much. It's really just this lack of understanding of workers' feelings and lack of value for their workers' feelings. We're used to get the product out, but aside from that, not really thought of as people, let alone as people who are passionate about coffee, which I would say a majority of us are. We're working in this field because we like to do it, and we unionize for that same reason. We want to make the job better because it's something we do enjoy. And I would hope that management would be able to see that, but I think a lot of the times they're just preoccupied with their metrics and customer satisfaction surveys and the like.
I've talked to a lot of Starbucks workers who talk about the cup writing policy as really being kind of crazy. Like you're preparing 80 drinks an hour, maybe in kind of during a rush period, and you're supposed to write a heartfelt message on each one of those. Just want to see what that looks like in your store. And also, like, is management enforcing that you have to write on every cup?
I think that with this cup policy, it's just a testament to the fact that things are going backwards at Starbucks under Brian Nickel. The fact that our staffing and operations have just gotten worse from this policy, and the fact that they claim that this is bringing us back to the old Starbucks, when in reality, I know for most cups I write yum or enjoy or just a smiley face on all of them. And I'm sure you guys have seen on social media people saying, oh, these Starbucks workers look tired of writing on cups because they're posting that exact same thing. It's really impossible to write a custom message on every single cup. And I think Starbucks also recognizes that based on the fact that my team at my store was given a list of phrases to put on cups. And I'm not saying that they're AI generated. What I am saying is if you were to say they were AI generated, I probably wouldn't argue too hard. It was things that no real human would ever say. And it really does show that lack of connection between the bourgeoisie and the working class, right? They don't understand what an average worker's conversation is to one another. And putting these corporatized phrases on there isn't really going to make anyone's day better. If anything, seeing those would make me think, that's ridiculous. Why would I drink this drink? This is nonsense on my cup. You've written nonsense here. So yeah, I think it's really just a testament to the fact that that's not what anyone wants. People want a cheaper drink. They don't want somebody to write yum or a smiley face on every single cup. And also, just a personal grievance of mine, they censor our cup writing. They censor our cup writing, guys. We're not allowed to draw animals. We're not allowed to draw anything political, but also not any pop culture. So things like slay or any sort of like pop culture phrase you can't write, which, okay, that can be misconstrued. But I'm biased. I loved drawing cats on everyone's cups when the policy was initially rolled out, and that was my go-to. And they did take my cat away from me, and I have been told by management I'm not allowed to do that, so it does make me sad. And I'd also say I've never seen my manager write on most cups, so I don't know if that's a policy that's enforced for everyone or just a policy enforced for the average barista.
I'm sorry, as if finding yum on your cup is not more off-putting than a cat?
That's what I'm saying. And like people would be so excited when they saw the cups, especially like little kids would come in and get like a hot chocolate or some other like sweet beverage. And they would see the little cats on their cups and go up and show their parents and say, "Oh, she drew a cat on my cup," or something similar. And that would make my day and their day. And they really did force that corporatization of this cup writing down everyone's throats again when people just want something genuine from their workers and from the people they see on a day-to-day basis.
For sure. So this whole back to Starbucks, like, supposed to make Starbucks more friendly. But in addition to this, what you were just describing, the policy of free water and bathrooms seems like it's really making it less friendly. How does that play out in your store?
Yeah, I honestly find this policy to be not only frustrating from a social issue standpoint and just a human being standpoint, but also it puts us in danger. I've had multiple safety incidents over this policy at my store, and it is something that has made some of my coworkers feel genuinely unsafe walking home because of the threats they received over this policy, especially due to the lack of clear communication towards the customer base around this policy. I think has led to a lot more frustration for people. When you are super used to going into Starbucks, grabbing a water and taking a spot to cool down during a super hot day, and then you're suddenly told while you're already hot, tired, and been walking all day that you can't have that water, it's natural to be frustrated. And while you shouldn't take that frustration out on baristas, I think it's something that if I were to change that policy, I would recognize that as a risk. And I would try to mitigate that as much as possible. And I feel like a lot of us baristas don't feel as if the risks coming with those policy changes have been thought through.
Now, I know you all went out on strike last year, and you all had a strike vote recently. How did that go? And how do you feel the energy is compared to last time?
I am so excited. I know my store is so excited. We had an overwhelming majority at my store voting to support the strike. And our union in general is really strong. We're very united. We're very passionate. And we recognize the fact that this is a key step in the modern labor movement. This contract is really just a cornerstone for the modern labor movement in the sense that it shows that this like egregious labor law violator can be taken down and will be held to account when it comes to their mistreatment of their employees.
And I know that ULPs are one of the issues, right? If you go on strike, it's a ULP strike, right?
Yes, it would be a ULP strike. And I think it's an important thing to emphasize to the general public of what a ULP strike is and why they matter. ULPs aren't just some generic phrase that we throw around. It's violations of labor law that have taken place. And that can be anything from policy violations and basic violations that most people think of that are more casual to actual workplace safety violations that have put partners in danger. And it's important that these things are rectified. These are gross abuses of workers, and to whitewash it in any way and corporatize it in any way really does it a disservice, which I feel like is often the narrative pushed, which I think from the broader public is due to a lack of understanding, but from corporate is usually due from a more malicious perspective.
That's such a great explanation of ULPs. And for, our listeners who are maybe like me looking for their favorite celebrity gossip podcast and found the Labor Notes podcast instead, ULP stands for unfair labor practice. And those are the charges that unions or even workers can file at the National Labor Relations Board, or if you're in a public sector, it might be like your local public sector board, but that you can file when the employer violates labor law in some way. So, Sabina, something I've been hearing that I know is coming up, I'm hearing it from union, but I know corporate's also advertising it, is Red Cup Day. And can you tell us a little bit about what that is and why it might be seen as a, significant moment?
Yeah, my store is dreading Red Cup Day, to say the least. And I think that's a testament for most baristas right now. It's one of the busiest days for Starbucks all year. For people who don't know, you go in and you order your drink and you get this free plastic red cup with your drink. And it really is one of those days that emphasize the lack of staffing at stores to me, because it's days where you expect your wait time for drinks to be 15 plus minutes. And that's for orders you place in the cafe, let alone mobile orders, which are a completely different process. It's something that is so well known to be a day of like frustration and overwork on behalf of the employees that I was talking to an ex-manager today at my store. And when I mentioned the idea of Red Cup Day coming up soon, his face genuinely went pale. And this is someone who's quit the job. His face went pale and he said, "Oh, are you guys getting prepared for that? You guys must be worried." That's a relatively large amount of concern for someone who doesn't even work at the company anymore. And it really does show the fact that like the overwork and the lack of consideration that is given to us on days like this and on any like holiday launches and any sort of big merchandise launch really does lead to negative consequences for staff. And these are things that affect you long term. Like you will constantly remember the day you cried in the walk-in because you couldn't get enough orders out in time and somebody got mad at you. It's something that I think we all have been well aware, and that it almost feels like a weight hanging over a lot of our heads right now when it comes to Red Cup Day. But I think it's also a testament to the fact that we aren't willing to put up with this anymore, and our frustration has reached that breaking point, and that we aren't willing to just continuously go through another year of feeling this understaffing. And I think Red Cup Day both exacerbates the point and is a perfect testament to it.
That's amazing. Thank you. I know we keep coming back to Starbucks, but it's just mind-boggling that on top of everything else, this plan has also cost $1 billion. That's money going into remodeling stores, not actually investing in employees in any meaningful way. If anything, stores have actually cut staff, and baristas are having a hard time getting enough hours. How are workers responding to this, and what's it been like to organize around it?
Yeah, I know you guys said it earlier, but many Starbucks baristas do rely on these benefits for SNAP and Medicaid to make ends meet. And I know personally I'm okay with sharing my wage. I think most people should be. I make $15.50 an hour. That's not a lot of money. It's especially not a lot of money going into things like the holiday season. It's something I'm hyper aware of all the time. And when you put that into perspective with the salary of someone like Brian Nickel or the $1 billion spent on this Back to Starbucks campaign, it really does emphasize that like wealth disparity between the two classes. And for a fraction of that money, you could have a contract in place and give us all the economic proposals that we were hoping for. So I think the emphasis is always on the wrong point with Starbucks. Putting the money into things like Back to Starbucks instead of lowering drink prices, ensuring coffee is ethically made, and solving those ULP issues is what you should be spending money on. Maybe not writing on cups and adding ceramic for here ware to every store. I think I only use that ceramic ware maybe once or twice a week personally. And that's for my food, let alone the customers who don't really use it or know it exists. So I really do think it's a testament to the fact that Starbucks doesn't understand where their money should go. And I think not only customers and workers see this, but I think even recent letters from the C-suite have illustrated this point. We've seen everyone is frustrated with the CEO's decision over the past year. And I think on all fronts, Brian is hopefully feeling the pressure here to make some real changes.
So, given the strike vote, which was 92% nationally, and given that Starbucks, as far as we can tell, is not moving off the dime, you all are likely to, at least some of you, be going out on strike starting November 13th. So just wondering how you're preparing for that and how you're thinking about it.
Yeah, I would like to emphasize the fact that we didn't just start preparing for this, and this isn't something that we've thought of lightly, right? We've been preparing for this for a very long time, and it's been something at the forefront of my mind for a longer time than most people might think. Starbucks knows where we stand. They've known where we stood since they proposed some less than fair proposals at the last negotiation session. And what we have clearly stated since then and have always made clear is all we need is better hours, better take-home pay, and resolving the outstanding legal issues. We want new proposals so we can move forward and finalize that contract. And until then, you will see us and our allies on the picket line. And we have so many people who are ready to show us support.
Yeah, so what are some things people who are listening can do to support you all?
Yeah, I think obviously the always key thing is not crossing the picket line. So not buying Starbucks when workers are on strike is always ideal. Signing our no contract, no coffee pledge. And I'm going to hopefully have you guys link that at some point. And just generally staying plugged into our fight, turning up, supporting us, and just making sure that you look at your baristas and you look at your fellow worker with kindness. More so than that, to a greater point, really, I would say we need to look at the Starbucks strike and really this like modern labor fight as what it is in clear standing. And Starbucks in this way is trying to discount the importance of this, but our union is really doing so much for the modern labor movement. And more so than just supporting us, I would encourage everyone listening and everyone here to organize within their communities, organize your workplace, learn more, be in your community, be local, and work with each other and recognize the fact that your fellow worker isn't your enemy. Your enemy is always the person who's holding the boot on your neck.
Sabina, thank you so much for being here. We will be sure to add that pledge link to our show notes. And that's our episode. Please rate us or leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. If you're listening to us on Podbean at labornotespodcast.podbean.com, download our episode.
We're also in the middle of our annual end-of-year fundraising drive. Regular donations from rank-and-file workers help us put on the podcast every week, along with our workshops and troublemaker schools, our reporting, and of course, the Labor Notes Conference every 2 years. One of the best ways to support us is by becoming a monthly donor, which you can do at labornotes.org/donate. If you start a new monthly donation at $10 a month or more, you will get our limited edition Fight the Boss, Build the Union t-shirt, along with a free subscription to the Labor Notes magazine, and we will share regular updates on Labor Notes projects and organizing efforts, and you can be in closer touch with our staff.
Speaking of our programming, we've got some events coming up you can sign up for at labornotes.org/events. And if you sign up for one, you can also get a code for a 50% discount to the Labor Notes magazine and get 11 issues for just $15 a year instead of $30. Our next Stewards Workshop is this month, and it's on the topic of dealing with difficult supervisors. That will be on Thursday, November 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll also be running our Winning a Strong Contract series on Mondays, December 1st and December 8th at 7 p.m. Eastern. These are all online workshops. Again, you can sign up at labornotes.org/events.
Labor Notes is also co-hosting a webinar with Haymarket Books and the American Prospect on Tuesday, November 18th, where you can hear from contributors to our roundtable series on how unions can defend worker power under Trump 2.0. You can sign up for that at labornotes.org/events as well. And we'll be having an in-person event coming up next month. That would be the Troublemaker School in New Orleans on Saturday, December 6th. And you guessed it, you can also sign up for that on labornotes.org/events.
The Labor Notes podcast is produced by Daniel Smith, Sindhu Sundar, and myself. Our title music was written and performed by our coworker, Keith Brower Brown. See you next week. Solidarity, y'all.